welcome back to the shop. This episode is part 2 of a 3-part series looking at a comparison between the Inknote Plus and the Ultra C. Those are shorthand for the Bigme Inkote Color Plus and the Boox Tab Ultra C. The last episode that we saw, the Inknote Plus took a slight lead. So now we're going to focus today's episode on reading apps and activities, and we'll see how the two devices fare. So let's get into it. As a reminder, this is where we left off as of the last episode, and you can see the remaining categories, including the ones that will be covered today. Okay, for our next comparison, we're going to look at Google News on each of the devices. And so let's go ahead and tap on the apps simultaneously. And they launch mainly about the same speed, slightly faster on the Ultra C. Let's take a quick look at settings before we start going too deep into this. So we are at a little bit of darkness on extreme. And over here, the Ultra C, we are on ultra fast, a little bit of darkness. Perfect. That's exactly what we want. All right. Let's go ahead and we'll scroll a little bit over here. We'll scroll a little bit here. Okay. So one of the things you're noticing on the Inknote Plus is that you get a little bit of ghosting and then there's a screen flash. Let me show that again. Okay. The screen flash is due to the refresh rate that was set, and I should have noted that when we were in the E-Ink Center, and you can see here it is at 1. Let's go ahead and set that to 0. 0 will mean there'll be no flash, but you'll see more ghosting as a result of that. Okay, let's take a look at the Ultra C. Much better in handling ghosting, and it's not having to flash to refresh the screen. Let's do a comparison. Let's see if we can find, here we go. And we'll refresh. Oops. What happened there? Oh, I see, I hit that by accident. Sorry, let's see if we can refresh. There we go. And we'll refresh here. Excellent. Okay, both screens are now refreshed, and we've got 2 images to compare here. This image is a little bit darker. You can see the green numbers are darker. The background, the red cloth that this smartwatch is sitting on is darker on the Ultra C. The Inknote Plus looks a little more crisp to me. It's lighter, so the darkness, I think, is bringing out the colors a little bit better, but the lightness of the Inknote Plus is bringing out some of the details a little better. So pretty interesting. Let's click on each article and see what we get in terms of the text. Okay, looks like we have a little ad there, and we have an ad here. We'll get rid of those. Or not. Let's try that again. Okay, I guess we'll just ignore it. All right, so here you can see the header is in bold text, and over here it's in a light text. This is an interesting difference. When I go into the E-Ink Center and I go into app optimization, believe it or not, this sliding bar does impact the app, but it doesn't impact the text at all. And I'll show you exactly what I mean. If I go to small, okay, that looks pretty much like it looked before. Oh my goodness, they are just assaulting me with ads here. Let's go ahead and go into app optimization and go all the way to the other end. And about the same, actually. Now, there are changes. If you noticed, this arrow is now really large. When we had the DPI lower, it was much smaller, but inside the article itself, it doesn't make much of a difference. It's a different story over here on the Inknote. If I go into app optimization, I have it on max. Let's go ahead and go all the way to the bottom. Huge difference. So very strange that the app, the DPI settings function very differently on the two devices. A little more functional on the Inknote in this particular case. Let's back out of this article. And let's go into this. If I can find it. Both scroll quite smoothly, so no real issues there. Okay. There we go. Let's go into the, I don't know if we'll be able to go in. All right, so we're seeing the same themes. Darker text and darker images over here. Virtually no ghosting. Oops. Are we stuck here? Huh. Well, that's interesting. This... Oh, okay. It's because of... That's what I was afraid of. The Atlantic has a paywall, so let's go ahead and get out of that. We'll go into this article as well. All right, excellent. Okay, we'll go in. Let's go ahead and try to eliminate that ghosting and see what that looks like. So if I go into the Ink Center and I click on one, it'll refresh. So the good news is it refreshes to the extent that the ghosting completely goes away. Oops. What's not happening here? You know, it's interesting. No matter what, it depends on the app that you, or the article rather, you go into. Sometimes scrolling it will trigger the refresh, and sometimes it won't. In this case, it isn't. Both are scrolling pretty smoothly. Again, the difference is predominantly the darker text here. Even though they have the same darkness settings, this has a lighter text. Kind of like the darker text a little bit. I think it presents itself a little nicer. There's the refresh. You've got much more ghosting going on over here. You know, the ghosting isn't terrible over here. It's completely tolerable. See, now it's refreshing for some odd reason. Let's put those images up and we'll compare them. How far down did I go? There we go. All right, let's do a refresh of both. Okay, excellent. All right. Well, to me, both images look pretty much identical. This one's a little darker, but I'm not seeing any loss of detail, even though this... So the trade-off in a lot of these demonstrations is a darker image on the Ultra C, a lighter image on the Inknote, the darker image looking a little bit better for color vibrancy, but the detail looking a little bit better on this side. And I actually think that you don't see better detail in this particular image. You can see, in fact, her outfit looks a lot shinier And you can certainly see the details there just as you can see them here. So a little bit better image for the Ultra C in that particular case. All right. So now you can see every time I scroll, you get some ghosting, and then the flash eliminates the ghosting. So you can either live with it if you don't mind the flash, and then there's no ghosting to deal with, or you turn that off and you've got some ghosting to deal with. I don't think the ghosting is that bad, but it's certainly present. And there's very little, you see a little bit of ghosting right in here, but there's not a lot of ghosting going on with this one. And somehow this kind of the layout of the articles and the headlines and just being a little bit bigger, it's a little bit nicer on the Ultra C. So I guess in conclusion, I think, again, both devices handle Google News fairly well, but the lack of ghosting and the overall niceness of the layout will give the advantage here to the Ultra C. The Ultra C has now come into a tie with the Inknote Plus, but still plenty of categories to go for each device. All right, so the next thing we're going to look at is the Kobo app, and we're just going to focus on basic reading. We'll look at how book covers look on each device, and then we'll kind of go into the reading. So let's go ahead and do that. We'll click on each simultaneously. All right, excellent. Now, one of the key differences between the two devices is that the Kobo app on the Inknote Plus, the covers look much better when you go into the e-ink mode of Extreme. So at Extreme, these covers are nearly identical to each other. They both look great. Oddly enough, the Inknote for once looks a little bit darker. Let's take a quick look at our darkness settings to see if they're comparable. That's 12. That's normal. We'll refresh. And over here, yeah, darkness. Yep. Yeah. So, for once, the Inknote Plus is a little bit darker, but they both look really good. The differences are actually subtle. The issue, however, is that while the covers look the same when this is in the Extreme mode, the performance isn't the same. And you can see the ghosting there already. Let me just go ahead and flip through. See, there's ghosting in the text, which doesn't exist on this side, on the Ultra Plus. The speed of the two is about the same. I'll demonstrate that. Oops. Actually, the Inknote is just a hair faster. Let me get through this chapter here. There we go. But you have the problem of the ghosting. Now, the good news is you can get rid of the ghosting. To do that, we'll go into the e-ink center and we'll move from Extreme to Regal. Let's do a quick refresh and let's go. Okay, not much ghosting. It's pretty much gone, but it slows down just a little bit. So let's do a comparison and see how they compare. Oops. Let me get through the new chapter. Okay, here we go. Not bad though. Actually pretty close to each other. The text on the Ultra is a little bit darker than the text on the Inknote Plus. But if I was just looking at the Inknote Plus by itself, it wouldn't stand out to me that the text was too light. It only looks lighter in relation to the Inknote Plus. The Ultra C. I would say that the actual performance between the two is virtually identical while you're in the process of reading. The key difference is when you're looking at the covers, it's going to look better on... course, this stuff pops up when I'm doing a demonstration. It looks better on the Ultra C. I can match this by changing the e-ink center, the refresh rate. Oops, it kicked me out. That wasn't very nice. Let's go ahead and go down and go in here. Right, I can go to extreme, and the covers look fantastic, just like they look on the Ultra C, but I have to make that change. That really is the only tangible difference I can see between these two devices on this app. I'm kind of torn how to score this, but I guess that is a difference, and we'll have to give the advantage to the Ultra C, but my goodness, that is the slimmest of margins. Once you're inside reading a book, the experiences are effectively identical. It's just that you have to go from the covers to the text. You have to switch e-ink to get the optimal performance here, and here you don't have to make that type of transition. So by the slimmest of margins, but advantage to the Ultra C. After a close call, the Ultra C now takes its first lead, and 2 more categories to go in this episode. Okay, next up is Flipster, and that is basically an app that allows you to look at magazines. So I'm using Flipster as a way to compare magazine viewing on the 2 devices. Just before we get into that, one quick observation. You'll notice that there's a difference between the Flipster app icons. The Inknote Plus has a little bit of gray shading on the bottom that kind of gradiates to white atop, whereas the Ultra C is a pure white background. There's no color gradient back there. Kind of in a similar fashion, the Kindle app has color in blue and white on the Inknote Plus, but the Ultra C, it's a black and white icon instead. It doesn't really mean anything. I don't really think one form factor is better than the other, but it is an interesting difference between the 2. I will say this in general. I think that in terms of system apps, I think that the Ultra C did a better job in kind of putting nice colors and kind of creating a unified theme among their system apps, where the Inknote relied more on black and white. Kind of kudos in this case to Ultra C for taking advantage of the color in their system UI, but it's all minor aesthetics. But anyway, let's go ahead and go into the Flipster apps. All right, and we'll go into my library in each one. Actually, let's go into here. We can see the covers. Okay, so a quick demonstration of covers. Both devices look great. The Ultra C has some darker colors, which I think make them look a little more vibrant. If you see some of the green area on this cover right here, really nice kind of background there. The green here is a little bit more vibrant than here as well. So generally speaking, the Ultra C looks just a little bit better. The Inknote Plus is a little bit lighter. They're both seeming to capture, as far as I can tell at a glance, the same level of detail. So I don't think you're losing any detail going from the Ultra C to the Inknote Plus. Just nicer colors on the Ultra C because it's a little bit bolder and looks a little crisper to me too. Let's go ahead and go in. I've gone ahead and downloaded the Consumer Reports app, so we'll click on that and we'll read. Okay, we're going to end up starting at the same point, and we'll do some comparisons of swiping here. See if I can. A little bit of a disadvantage in my reach. There we go. Oh my. Holding. Okay. I can do this, I promise. There we go. Okay. Both very responsive. If this is user error, any differences that you see in there. Both really good. Okay. Oops, I'm a little out of sync now. There we go. Now, both look equally good, slightly darker on the text. I was going to say the Ultra C might be a little bit darker on the text, but now I'm not so sure. Let's go ahead and zoom in and see what that looks like. Okay, good. Okay, both zoomed in pretty easily. Yeah, both look really good actually. Let's kind of scroll, see what that's like. Okay. Yep, both very responsive. Let's go back over there to the top. We'll go back over here to the top. Yeah, looks pretty good. Very, oops. Kind of zoom in on that picture there. There we go. Yep. Not bad. I do like the image a little bit better. Over here, it's darker. I think I can see a little more detail actually in the Ultra C. Over here, a little bit lighter, a little bit of loss of detail. You can see that on the hands. You do see a little bit of ghosting here on the Inknote Plus, but the ghosting is pretty minimal. Just a touch of ghosting with the Ultra C, but really it's almost nothing to note. Now we could, just like other apps, eliminate the ghosting by upping the refresh rate to 1. It's currently at 0, so if I go to 1, it'll refresh and you'll get that flash. That's the trade-off. Not a trade-off. Boop, there we go. Not a trade-off with the Ultra C. There's really hardly any ghosting at all. And yeah, both look really good. This is another situation where pretty amazed at how similar the performance is between the two apps. Do like the color and the darkness a little bit better on the Ultra C, but I think ultimately the differentiator is the ghosting. You get a lot more ghosting over here. In order to get rid of that, you have to set the refresh rate to some level where it will refresh the screen. Again, if that doesn't bother you, then these are comparable experiences. Let's go back and remind ourselves of what it's like when, oops, I'm in the wrong place. Here we go. We'll put refresh to 0 and we'll see how bad the ghosting is. Yep, you can see some back there. Let me go ahead and refresh the screen. See, this is quite a bit of ghosting there. Yeah, it's definitely a differentiator. I mean, there's no question that this is providing the superior experience without having to flash. And this can match that, but the trade-off is that you do have that flash of the screen. That may be nothing to some people. It may mean a lot to others. But that's enough to give the advantage to the Ultra C, I think pretty soundly. But again, much like with other apps, see, those images both look great. Let's see if we can zoom in. A little bit of ghosting there, but it just does a really good job. A lot more ghosting there. It really needed that flash. Now this is interesting that this page number here is a little bit darker than this one over here. You see little differences like that between the apps, and it's just not clear why these things take place. But again, we find ourselves in a situation where very comparable performances on both devices, but the edge going to the Ultra C. A reoccurring theme, and it reoccurs here again with magazines. That now marks 4 categories in a row for the Ultra C and 1 more reading category left on today's agenda. Okay, in this video, our focus turns to the Kindle app, and we're going to use that as our vehicle to see how comics perform differently on the 2 devices. So let's go ahead and launch that. Oops. And let's go ahead and zip this over. There we go, all way to the beginning. Beautiful, okay. All right, and one of my favorite comparison apps is the comic book day version of Transformers Regeneration 1. Let's take a look at our settings, see if we're in comparable settings. Okay, we're in extreme mode. Darkness is about 12. Set the refresh frequency to 2. So I'll explain that as we go through. And then over here, we are on ultra fast mode. Darkness, again, very similar. Perfect. Now we've set up both comics to go cell by cell. So let's go ahead and do a comparison of the next few pages. Already, you can see a lot of ghosting. You can still see the image of Optimus Prime there behind in the background. But the next time I swipe, the ghosting will be eliminated because that's how we set the refresh rate. Okay, and we just saw it right then. Both of these images look really good. They look virtually identical to each other. Let's go ahead and click on this. A little bit of a smoother animation on the Ultra C, but the timing of both is pretty identical. Okay, we do see a little bit of ghosting here on the Ultra C, but you see a lot of ghosting on the Inknote Color. So the Inknote Color really needs that refresh rate in order to make the image look its best. And there it is. When it does go through that refresh, I can't tell the difference between these two. I see no difference in detail. I see no difference in color. It looks fantastic. Both are moving forward at about the same rate. Don't see a lot of difference in performance in terms of speed. A lot more ghosting on this one for the Ultra C, which is a little unusual. We haven't seen a lot of that up to this point. And a lot of ghosting, of course, with the Inknote. Now let's go ahead and set that refresh rate to 1. So now we're going to have it refresh every time. Oops, there we go. All right, get to the same page. And let's go ahead and advance. Oops, there we go. Oh, that was my bad. There we go. All right, you get the idea. So basically, I'm looking at an almost identical experience between the two. The biggest difference, of course, being in order to make these images look equivalent, we have to set this refresh rate to 1, something you don't need to do over here on the Ultra C. However, there is ghosting with the Ultra C as well, and you can see it particularly in these black bars. It's not present here because we've refreshed the screen. So this therefore becomes the trade-off. Natively, the Ultra C performs better. It has a little bit of ghosting, but not nearly the amount of ghosting as the Inknote Plus. However, if you set the Inknote Plus to refresh every time, you're going to get a pristine image every time. And then the Inknote Plus will look better than the Ultra C, although it's not a huge difference, as most of the ghosting is happening in the black bars. It's much harder to see in the image itself. Very interesting. So, this is going to be so hard for me to rate. I mean, I want to rate this as a tie. Does the refreshing, the flashing of the screen, mean that the Ultra C gets the advantage? And it all comes down to whether that flashing bothers you or not. Well, personally, the flashing doesn't bother me at all. And I appreciate the end result of that. And I just see the flashing as analogous to the process of turning the page. How does that affect it in terms of timing? How much extra time are we getting? Okay, yeah, so they're turning at the same rate, and then the flash. So the Ultra C. Oh, this is so tough to call. I'm. Okay, I guess I'm going to go ahead and give the Ultra C the advantage here. But man, it's close. The flashing doesn't bother me at all. And look, again, you're seeing some ghosting up here that you don't see here, but it's like mostly in the black bar. So, okay, this is a tough one to call. You can keep your own score at home. I'm going to go ahead and give the advantage to the Ultra C, but by the slimmest of margins in my mind. This is super close. Both perform absolutely fantastically, and Kaleido 3 is great with comics, and both devices showcase that perfectly well. With a sweep of today's categories and now 5 victories in a row, the Ultra C heads into the final episode with a strong lead, but can it hold? And that concludes part 2 of our comparison between these two devices. Boox really came from behind this week and have taken a strong lead. We'll have to see what happens. Next week, can Bigme come from behind? Can Boox retain its lead? We'll find out soon, especially if you subscribe and click that notification button. Anyway, it's great seeing you again, and I'm looking forward to seeing you in future episodes. Have a great day.